He stands at 6 foot 3 inches tall and weighs 150 kilograms with very low body fat percentage. From this description, you may assume that I am talking about some off-season Mr. Olympia who is a giant. That is not correct. Richard Lupkes is a 66-year-old farmer slash arm wrestler from Rushmore, Minnesota. Richard started arm wrestling around 1976, but it was only around 1980 when he started taking it seriously, and that was the time when the world of arm wrestling started taking him as a real threat. In 1986, Richard Lupkes competed in his first worldwide major tournament called Over the Top. Richard got the opportunity to compete in the truckers division because he had his commercial driving license. He was expected to win that thing, but to his and to everyone's surprise, standing in front of him across the table was this young 21-year-old boy called John Brezink. Unfortunately, Richard had a very long match which he was able to win, but then he was totally exhausted and put down by John Brezink quite comfortably. So Richard finished third in that big tournament. Then Richard went on to win 3 WAF World Championships. And in 2008, there was a big tournament in Richard's life. There he met John Brezink, Ryan SP, Tim Bresnan, and he was able to comfortably beat all of them to win the tournament. Richard considers this tournament win one of the biggest wins in his career. Then in 2011, Richard had 2 great matches. First one against Travis Bagent. That was a really famous match. At one point it looked like Travis was making a comeback, but Richard was able to beat him once again and get the match done 3 pins to 1. Then the famous match against Denis Siplenkov. Denis is a monster, and till this date Denis Siplenkov names Richard Lupkes as one of his toughest opponents that he has ever faced. For sure, he considers Richard to have the toughest hook that Denis has ever faced. That match lasted forever. Denis said that he was underestimating Richard's power, but it was something that he had never felt before, and he barely managed to win that match. And then there is this interesting fact about Richard Lupkes, that he never got pinned even once in a sit-down arm wrestling match. Richard was someone who did not have great technique, and when you arm wrestle while sitting down, technique is mostly negated. That is why Richard's raw, brute side pressure was impossible for anyone in the world to deal with, and he never got pinned or fouled out in a sit-down match. From the above mentioned description, you may assume that Richard must be someone who was taking his training procedure very seriously, but that was not true at all. Richard never had any training partner. He never did any table practice. For him, tournaments were practice. Richard was and probably is still a gym freak. He just loves to lift weights and he competes on the table. Some of his lifts are absolutely unbelievable. He weighs 330 pounds and does tricep dips with additional 300 plus pounds. That is just unheard of. Then Richard made a comeback and competed against Ryan SP in 2019. That was one of the greatest matches ever. Unfortunately, Richard lost that match 3 pins to 2. Then the sad part. Richard was old and he got sick with COVID. He was very critical, but somehow he survived, and now the good news is that he is back on the table. Richard Lupkes will be facing the young gun from USA, Chan Shaw, on May 5th at Monster Factory 4 event. Richard is extremely difficult to top roll. Chan Shaw is a top roller. Stylistically, it is a bad matchup for Chan Shaw. Can Chance pull it off, or does Richard still have what it takes to beat these young upcoming arm wrestlers? I think that is going to be an amazing match. Most of the arm wrestlers, most of the elite arm wrestlers who were friends with Richard Lupkes and fans of Richard Lupkes, they would want Richard to win this match and just create history. A 66-year-old arm wrestler, he will be 67 by then, beating a young 24-year-old upcoming arm wrestler. That would be just something that is unheard of. Thanks for watching, like the video and subscribe to the channel.